Welcome to LINQ to Objects. This is part one of a two-part lesson. In this video, we are going to cover using LINQ to query an array of integer values. The LINQ query structure basics, which include the from clause, where clause, select clause, and order by clause. We will go over implicitly typed variables and when to use them, the var keyword and how it's used in relation to LINQ. Then we'll discuss the for each statement, noting the different syntax used with LINQ. A LINQ query begins with a from clause, which includes the use of a range variable and a data source. The where clause filters the data based on a specified criteria of your choice. The order by clause sorts the return data that you get. And then finally, a LINQ query ends with a select clause, and that specifies the value we are selecting from the from clause. So let's talk a little bit about the var keyword. The var keyword can be used in place of an explicit data type. And when you use the var keyword, it lets the compiler infer what the variable type is by looking at the initializer. So here we have an integer called x, and it has a data type of 3, which is also an integer. So here's our data type of int. Here's our initializer, 3, which is also an integer. Now notice, if I change the data type to var, the compiler can still read it because the initializer is still an integer. This is true for other data types, such as double, string, character. When you use the var keyword, you are utilizing something called an implicitly typed local variable. And implicitly typed variables are generally saved for use with more complex data types, such as collections of data that have been returned from LINQ queries. Okay, let's open up the code and see if we can make sense of this. Okay, we have a little program here. It uses LINQ to query an array of integer values. Now first off, notice if we want to use LINQ, we have to bring in the namespace system.linq. We've created this integer array and filled it with values. However, we can use a different syntax to utilize our implicitly typed variables. Instead of int, with our square brackets, we can type in var, and then on the right side of the assignment operator, we have the new keyword with our square brackets. And what this is doing is it's allowing the compiler to infer the values based on what we have initialized the array to, which are integers here. And the new keyword with the square brackets tells the compiler that it will be a new array. Alright, down here we have a LINQ query that gets values larger than 7 from the array. Again, the LINQ query begins with a from, and it ends with a select. This is different from SQL, which begins with a select and then is followed by a from. So we have some differing syntax here. In the LINQ query, the from clause specifies a range variable, in this case called value, and then a data source, which we are calling values. Now using from at the beginning of the LINQ query allows IntelliSense to be wired up and available while you write the rest of the query. So it tells the IDE where to look for the range variable's different methods and properties. It represents each item in our data source, which is called values. This is very similar to the control variable in a for each statement. So here we have element. This is a control variable in the data source of values. Now notice here in the for each, we have a var. But here we do not specify any type of data. Why? Well, it's because this data is assigned one element at a time from the array of values that we already established. The array here is already an int array, so the compiler knows that since all the elements in an array must be the same data type, each element will be an integer. So this is another example of implicitly typed local variables, which allows the compiler to infer the local variable's type based on the context it's used in. So a different syntax. We use the var keyword here for the for each. We do not use it in our LINQ statement. Next in our LINQ statement, we have the where clause. If the condition in a where clause evaluates to true, then the element is selected, which means you have results. So in this where clause, we are saying if a value in our integer array is greater than 7. So this will make sure that no values are returned unless they're greater than 7. And finally, we have the select clause. And it basically says that for each item in the data source, it's going to determine what value appears in the results. In this case, it's the int that the range variable currently represents, which is value. Now remember, a LINQ query typically ends with a select statement. In our code below, we're using a for each statement to iterate through the contents of the array. For each statements can iterate through the contents of arrays, collections, and the results of LINQ queries. The for each statement here iterates over the query result called filtered. Here we have our filtered result. Here we have named our query filtered. And then it just simply displays each item in the console. Notice again, we have var element in filtered. And then our formatted console is going to write out that element based on what is being returned from that LINQ query. Now if we scroll down further, we'll come across another clause. It's the order by clause. So this query, which we have called sorted, is going to take our values and order them according to ascending order, which is default. If we wanted to order them in descending order, which is the largest number to the smallest number, we would put in the descending keyword after our range variable right here. Now if we wanted to, we could type in ascending and see it exists. It's a keyword. It works just fine. However, it is not needed because it is the default value for order by. Something going on behind the scenes here is a comparison. Now you can use order by to compare any simple data type. However, it has to be a data type that you can compare, such as integer or double, because if you can't compare the two data types, it does not know how to order them. Okay, if we run this code, let's see what we get. Kind of hard to see, but you'll notice here we have our original array printed out, an array of values greater than 7 are all printed out, and then we sort them in ascending order from smallest to largest number. Our integers greater than 7 in ascending order, and our integers greater than 7 in descending order. One more quick look as we scroll down. Notice here we have a query named filtered and sort. We're taking our value, which is our range variable, within our data source called values, where the value is greater than 7, and we are ordering them by the value in descending order. Finally, we select that value. And that's it for LINQ to Objects Part 1, Querying an Array. Please go on to LINQ to Objects Part 2, Querying an Array of Objects using LINQ. And remember, geek is chic.